So basically what we want this session to be about is to get some initial thoughts from each of the panelists on what we've learned, what they have learned so far, where they see opportunities for integration across various different dimensions. You've seen them on your agenda, but also challenges and maybe something that wasn't spoken but should be addressed, should be in our consciousness. So Adam, have at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm really just going to talk around 3 points. I mean, first of all, this has been a fantastic workshop. I've learned a ton, and really grateful to get a chance to get to know all of you and your work. So the first theme is I am much less worried about the volume or ubiquity of people using the term resilience than how they're using resilience. I think there's a little bit of a red herring there. But understandably, just to give you an example, in New York City, I think people are using the term resilience, but really just using that to justify the same industrial economic development. And that's a huge problem because there in New York City, the people who have the most resources are not as vulnerable as the people who don't, and yet they're the loudest voices. And they're the ones that actually want that same industrial progress. So wrestling with the definitions and the theoretical constructs is important, but it's not going to solve the problem of how people use the term resilience. You can't do that unless you engage people. Unless scientists engage decision makers, communities, individuals to understand the decision context and the problem context that they're facing. And I've found, I mean, I'm not a social scientist, although increasingly I work with them because I find that the social, behavioral, and economic sciences have so much value to add there in not just structuring the process, not coming in at the end for translation, but literally real research, exploratory research about what people are facing, the decisions they're making. And we're putting that, that's happened over the past 20 years in the RISA program, NOAA's Regional Integrated Sciences and Assessments Program. We've got a book coming out about this process, but I think when you find, you go through that, you not only improve the usability of the science, but I think you get a little bit closer to the illuminating the maladaptive behaviors and actually creating a space where you can talk about start to have the messy conversations about trade-offs and compromise and what really needs to happen. I think Susie's framework is a really, I'm glad we're using that today because it's really useful for that process of engagement. A lot of different people can see themselves in that. And that's a conversation starter. We would call that a boundary object, or some people might call that a boundary object. Second theme is the methods are not the societal imperative for resilience. Our methods are not the societal imperative for resilience, in my opinion. I've been watching, I've done a lot of work on sea level rise and climate adaptation in coastal areas, and I've seen that over the past 3 decades, we've been putting flood risk analysis out to people. More sophisticated maps, more probabilistic frameworks. So if we have this much information on flood risk probability, we've done this much adaptation on the coast. And that to me says, the imperative is actually not just improving the methods, but actually addressing some of these behaviors. And then the final one is the immediacy of the decisions or the problems that people are making doesn't always line up with learning. So this engagement process, there's an emphasis on learning, whether it's in a resilience framework or an adaptation framework. But that doesn't necessarily mean that accelerating the engagement process is the answer. And that I mention that because I think that's really where we have to start to be able to diagnose the institutional landscape and really see where are there these boundary organizations that facilitate this kind of engagement, and how can we bolster those, and where are they missing? And we have to actually create new institutions. For me, that's really important because there are consultants doing resilience work in the New York City area, including in Jamaica Bay. If their thing doesn't stick right away, if somebody doesn't use it, they might just fly away. And what we're trying to do with the Institute is actually have some stable capacity to have these conversations over time. And that's it.
Great, perfect.
Sorry.